it's Jenni Smith and we're on to block 7 of the Splendid Sampler 2 sew along. This is called For the Love by Sharon and it's based on the tulip blooms that she loves in her hometown. It's English paper piecing, and the video that I've put together this week talks about how to make your templates easily, just using things that you've got in the house, talks about how to glue baste, which order to do it in, how to construct it, what colours, threads to use, all the little things to be wary of when you're English paper piecing, like tucking in the dog ears and things as you go around the shape to applicate on the background. I took my papers out and pressed it so that I haven't had to cut away at the back and then take the papers out, so I changed up the order a little bit towards the end of the block. So hopefully this video will be helpful. Making plastic templates for English paper piecing, if you don't have any template plastic in the house, which I don't at the moment, is easy if you just use some recycled plastic packaging. So I've got a fruit punnet here. Actually this isn't the best because there's all these bumps here, but this central part here is clear plastic. So all that I've done is I've cut out 2 of the templates here, which you can see with my paper scissors, and then I've just stuck them to the back of a wide piece of masking tape with the print side up and put that on the underneath of the clear plastic there. And what that means is that these papers aren't going to be sliding around as I'm trying to cut around them, because obviously you need to be really accurate. So then you can just go in with your plastic scissors or scissors you're not too bothered about and cut the template out following that line, and then obviously just the paper comes away from it and you've got your templates ready to go. And actually if you're not fussy cutting, you don't need the clear plastic template. So in this case I've left the paper on because it's just a little bit easier to see my outline. So I'm now going to draw around this with a sharp pencil and cut out 4 of them and 4 in the reverse for the flower. Easier to then cut around the templates, especially when you've got straight lines here, just using a ruler for the 1/4 inch seam allowance and a rotary cutter. And I find that 1/4 inch is often a little bit more generous than what you think, so I like to measure my first one, and then what I'll do now, just to make it quicker, is just use this as my template then. So I'll pop that, I might just position it again to fussy cut slightly, and then I'll just position this onto the fabric and cut around that. So I might lose a thread or 2 off this one, but I've cut it plenty big enough to start off with. Another top tip about English paper piecing is that when you're cutting out your fabric from the templates, you don't have to worry too much about the grain of the fabric and which direction that you're placing this, because the fabric is stabilized by the paper that's going inside until you have stitched it all together and then removed it. So it's not something that you really have to consider as you would for other patchwork and in dressmaking. Cut out 4 of the templates one way, and then I've just flipped the fabric now and pinned it on the reverse, so I get the fabric going the opposite directions. And because there's this long curve here, I'm just finding it easier to go around with my sharp, smaller scissors, and then I'm ready for some basting. I'm using glue basting to arrange these pieces here rather than basting by hand, and normally on a piece like this you would glue baste the shorter section first, but I'm actually going to do this long curved edge first because you really want this edge to be as tidy as possible here, because this flower is then going to be appliqued onto the background. So this isn't being stitched into another shape, so I didn't want a big dog ear to have to deal with later. So it's easier to take your glue basting pen and do this long curved edge here first, and not too much glue, and then press for longer, then it's easier to remove the papers. And once you've gone around that curve there, then you can work your way around the rest of the shape until it looks like that, and then the diamond's more straightforward and you just glue baste that or stitch it as you would normally. I found it easier when I started whip stitching to secure this bottom section here first to make sure that they're level, and I chose a thread that matches this colour here. So I've gone for this pinky coloured Aurifil. You could use 50 weight, or if you've got an 80 weight that's the right colour, then use that. And obviously it's just making sure your hand tension's right when sewing so that it doesn't snap. And this is really lovely to work with, I find. And a straw needle is my favourite really for English paper piecing. So what I've done is I started at the bottom, stitched this section first, and then went straight into one side of the central diamond of the tulip, finished off, and then just came back and secured that second side like that. And the pink is fine, again, the thread colour, if you see any of it just between these two colours here, that seemed to work just fine. I decided to really wait and choose my centre block fabric once I'd made a couple of my flowers, because it was just to see what popped. I had a few different choices. I had this darker blue as one option here with the fussy cut flowers in the centre, but then when I actually put this brighter blue, it's all Liberty quilting cottons, when I popped the brighter blue one in, then I felt that worked nicer. So my next job now is to attach each of these flowers to the central square, and for this I'm going to use a dark grey thread, this one here, because I think that now I've got more contrasting colours, I think that will blend the best if you see any of the stitches. Another tip is to really ensure that you line up the edge of this flower block with this the edge of the square here. I started stitching this and had a tiny gap, and actually then need to join these seams, so I just had to take those stitches back to get a really nice join there. And now I'm going to bring my one right in next to the corner. I have stitched all the sections together now, and I've just given it a good press. So next job is to take the papers out carefully, press again, and then baste it in place on the background block, which they've recommended you cut a little bit bigger, but I did have a 6.5 inch square of this cream Liberty, so I'm just going to go with that and stitch carefully so that it doesn't change shape as I go. So taking the papers out when you've glue basted obviously takes a bit longer than normal, but it has made this much process quicker. So I think I'm on about 4 hours or so for this block at the moment with all the hand sewing. So just the last steps. I'm basting my flower down before I applique it, and I am using proper basting thread, which is a cotton that snaps easily, so that when I pull it out at the end it's not going to harm my fabric or cause any snags. And I do this flat on a surface if I can, so that the block behind, the background block, stays in shape and you're not getting any gathers. Really my focus here is just making sure these points are tucked underneath, that I can go back to and just turn under when I get to that stage with my needle later with a matching thread. But I'm just securing all the points. I would say that this block is quite tight to the edges. I've actually cut my background to the 6.5 inches, and I'm mindful that I need 1/4 of an inch for when I construct the quilt. So I don't know if mine's grown slightly as I've been working on it, but that's just something to be wary of as well. So here is my finished block for the Love by Sharon Burgess for the Splendid Sampler 2. I'm pleased with it because, to be honest, I'm not a huge English paper piecer. I've got a lazy left eye a little bit that I've had since I was little, so when I'm doing really close whip stitching then I go a bit cross-eyed, so I wasn't kind of looking forward to it, but I think it's the best piece of English paper piecing that I've done, so I'm proud of it. I'm slightly nervous about the seam allowance around the edge, but it's not far off 6.5 inches now. I've just measured it, so I'm just going to have to make sure that I don't lose these points when I sew it into the finished quilt. And it's a good 5 hours or so work really, because you're making the templates, glue basting or basting, hand stitching them together and then putting them onto your background. So definitely worth it, but it's going to take a little bit of time.